You're listening to the Animation Addicts Podcast, episode 356, The Boy and the Heron, a gaggle of dwarf hags. Welcome to the Animation Addicts Podcast with the Rotoscopers, the number one place to get your animation fix with animation addicts just like you. Each episode, we dive into the wonderful world of animation featuring Disney, DreamWorks, Pixar, and everything in between. From hilarious discussions and movie reviews to interviews with industry insiders, this show's mission is to brighten your day through our love of animation. So hop on your nerdy couch, grab some snacks, and get ready to hang out with your animation besties because it's time to dive into today's episode. Hey there, animation addicts. I'm Morgan Stradling.
And I'm Chelsea Robson.
We're back for another episode. This time we are jumping to Japan, which will be quite fun to talk about Hayao Miyazaki's latest animated film, The Boy and the Heron. But before we do, Chelsea, how have you been?
Oh, I've been delightful. This is going into, we're recording this in the end of October, and it should be up in the next little bit, so it shouldn't be too far away by the time it's actually uploaded. But I'm in Myrtle Beach, and it's starting to get a little cold. It's actually starting to feel like fall.
Lucky. What is a little cold to you? What temperature? Because it being from Arizona,
Yeah,
that totally is
for sure. Yes.
like real a little cold or Arizona a little cold. I imagine
Arizona a little cold.
So 70?
Because anytime it drops below 70, I'm generally like, "Can I get my sweater?" And especially if there's no sun out, and there have been some storms that have come through, and so it just like it feels a little chill, you know? And I'm like, "I really need my sweater."
Nice. We were 70s for a wee bit.
Oh,
last
nice.
week because we had a storm come in and there was some residual for that. But now we're in the 80s, which I will take.
Lovely.
Arizona has been 100, 110, in the summer. That's the bad part about living in Arizona. But the good part is the winters are great. So we are, even though it's 80s, it's like most people's summers.
Right.
That is a great sign. Like once we get out of the 90s, it's like, okay, things are happening soon. And the 80s quickly turn to 70s, within a month or so. So it's good. So anyway, I am excited to talk about this one. Actually, you are excited to talk about this one because you have had this on our list for quite a long time.
Well, no, you were the one who brought this up and wanted to ask the audience which one we should watch, either this one or a James Cameron, I believe. No, not a James Cameron.
What?
It was a
Avatar.
Not Avatar.
Jim Henson?
At some point in time you said, okay, we can watch this documentary on the composer
John Williams.
John Williams. There you go. I'm like, there's a John in this somewhere. Or Jim, I don't know names. So it was like either that one or The Boy and the Heron. And The Boy and the Heron ended up winning, but we never actually got into it because stuff comes up.
Live action remake series ended up happening, and then a bunch of new releases. So anyone who voted on that poll, apologies. We finally got to it.
Apologies, and we're finally here. And I just wanted to come through for the people who cared enough to vote because there were votes.
All right. Okay, so before we get started, let's jump into some general information about this film. The film is titled The Boy and the Heron. The release date in the United States was December 8th, 2023. It was released a few months earlier, July 14th in Japan. The production studio Ghibli. Distributors were Toho in Japan and G Kids in the United States. Directors, Hayao Miyazaki, written by Hayao Miyazaki. The composer was Joe Hisaishi, who is a longtime collaborator of his and has done a lot of scores for him. And the box office is $294.2 million. And I believe I read that this was one of the most expensive films to be produced in Japan. And then it was the 6th highest grossing Japanese film of all time with what it ended up making in the theaters. So this is interesting because this came about 10 years after The Wind Rises, which was supposedly Miyazaki's last animated film. He was going to retire after that. And then he ended up doing a short kind of in 2018 and then said, I want to do this. And so he came out of retirement and we get The Boy and the Heron. And it took, I believe, about 7 or 8 years, I think 7, to get this one made. About 2.5 years of pre-production, storyboarding, all of that. And then the actual animation took the rest.
Well, and what else is the man going to do with his life? He can't just retire and then not do anything. Like, I'm still here. I guess.
Mhm.
Have you ever seen the movie The Proposal?
Yes.
You know, at the very end where you have Betty White's character, she fakes a heart attack or something, and then she like, "I'm pretending to die." And then she, like, stops for a second, opens her eyes like, "Well, I guess God's not ready for me just yet. Hey, how about we continue on to this place?" And they're like, "What the?" But that's kind of it's like, "What? God's not ready for you, Hayao Miyazaki, so you gotta give us more, I guess."
No, and I think it's a great thing to continue doing what you love to do post retirement. We see lots of times when people retire very within a few years of retirement, they end up dying. It's because
Yeah.
you've lost that thing that kept you going and giving you consistency or fulfilling you in what way, whether that means it's out of necessity or more of a fulfillment for an artistic need, right? But I think it's good that he continued to do this and it kept him busy. And he's 84 years old now at the time of recording. So still has a lot of life to live. I think about my grandfather. He was a farmer and then had other jobs and then ended up moving into horse rehabilitation. So
Mm.
for race horses and continued to do that up until basically he died. I mean, he just had his horses that he'd work with and rehab them. And then I also think of Fred Rogers, who
Ah, yeah.
continued to do Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood up until almost the very end. And I think that's great. I think it's awesome. And here we go. This is the fruit of that. And this is a very personal film to him. I was reading up on it and he can represent so many people in the film. He can represent the uncle, the granduncle who's moving on and passing away, but also Mojito, who is the boy. This is a very personal film to him and has themes that resonate with him, his childhood growing up in kind of this post-war Japan, or he was born like during the war, and obviously he himself, I read, had to leave the city and go to a rural part during the war, and his mom dying. Like, there's so many parallels with him, and so I think this was really a swan song that he wanted to create to help kind of work through that and to share his story, as well as the artistry and everything else that encompasses a Miyazaki film.
Yeah, there were so many different themes slash I don't know, like, at the end, I texted Morgan and I said, "I have no idea what I just watched." I just
Yeah.
it was there were a lot of moments in it where I like, "Wow, I really like that. Wow, I really like that." And then at the very end, it was just like, "Huh? Like, what?" I It reminded me of there was one point in time where, the Red Turtle was coming out, and
Mhm.
I was doing a press screening for that one,
Yeah.
and the woman who was like our press, liaison, she was the person that when you come out, you actually tell her what your, like, high level, thought on the movie
Mhm.
was, and she always reminded me about that time because when I walked out, she's like, "Yeah, your face was just blank, and then you said, 'I have no idea what I just watched.'" And I was like, I kind of feel the same way on this one, but this one was a lot more had a lot more moments that I was just like, "Oh, well, that's sweet, but also kinda weird, but also kinda sweet." So, yeah.
I feel the same way. Yeah. I love and appreciate Miyazaki films, and there's some amazing ones, obviously Spirited Away and Princess Mononoke are obviously huge highlights, and he has a huge career of things that he's done, but he has a very specific style. Sometimes Miyazaki films can be very abstract, gruesome,
Mhm.
whimsical, like, all of the above, right? And on the other side, you have some that are a little bit more grounded in reality.
Yeah.
And this was the opposite. At the beginning, I thought, okay, like I didn't know much going into this film. I didn't know anything other than really the title, and that Robert Pattinson did the Heron, so and I he was going to talk. So there was going to be that element there. But yeah, going into it, it starts pretty normal. There's the tragedy that happens to Mahito at the beginning with the fire and his mom, the fire at the hospital, and his mom was in the hospital and having to recover from that and then move. And then, and then the mom, he marries the sister. We meet the sister and she's pregnant. And then there's just,
Well, it doesn't even say that it's the sister at
we
first.
figure that out later. Yeah.
Yeah.
So before I like get into the movie, I'm like trying to get into plot points, but it starts in this realism, and then
Mhm.
slowly, then we're entering like, oh, there's this, he's exploring, and there's like a magical world, and or this like mysterious place, and so you go there, and it just kept evolving into more and more absurdity as
Yeah.
far as whimsical and creative and bizarre and weird and grotesque, with like organs coming out of animals. And
Yeah.
yeah, so it shifted very quickly. I was like, oh, this isn't going to be just more of a simple set in reality film.
No. And, I mean, I liked how it started out in reality,
Hmm.
and I liked, it was just very he he was so good at showing, not telling. And
Hmm.
so you start out with fire, war, and new beginnings. And then the thing is, the very first when they present the new mom, and I'm like,
Hmm.
okay, the new mom looks just like the dead mom. That's kind of weird. and and then she's like, guess what? I'm pregnant. But I felt like they did such a good job of like just showing him and you feeling his emotions without
Yes.
him saying
Yes.
anything.
Because the whole series of events at the very beginning is very disorienting and completely uprooting for a child.
Yes.
Not only does, the mom die, she dies in a tragic way, then you have to leave, and then now, poof, the dad has a new girlfriend, seemingly, from our perspective. I thought it was like a girlfriend, and then she's pregnant, so like, are they married? I don't know, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But it's like so much has escalated, and you're so right. The way that we're able to see his emotions, because it felt so quick and sudden, because it was, and kind of like everyone else had moved on, and he's just sitting here processing, kind of having to accept it,
Yeah.
which I think sometimes is what ends up happening with children. They're just kind of moved along and not considered as much. But and then we find out at a later point that it's the sister, which throws a whole other spin on it.
Yeah, so they don't tell you that the little girl is actually the mother,
Hmm.
and until after you already know
Hmm.
that it's her little sister
Hmm.
who, and so
Hmm.
it's just kind of like a very slow burn to figure out like how everything is connected. And by the time you understand exactly how things are connected, you're like, that's weird, but oh, that's really sweet of you to say about your son, Because like she's at the door and she's like, you are just such a good boy. And I was just like, well, the whole thing is weird, but at the same time, that's really sweet. Like,
I think that moment came like when that happened, I was like, "Oh, okay." I had this big realization, but I didn't feel it had the emotional punch that maybe it was supposed to or it needed to have, because with this movie, I didn't feel connected to any of the characters except
yeah,
for Mihito. Like everyone else who came into his life and interacted with, there weren't that many, but I just didn't have this emotional resonance with them that I felt like I should have. So when that moment came, it was like, oh, okay, because before she's like, okay, she's this girl, and it was just kind of like, for example, the sister goes missing, and he's determined to go find the sister, meaning the wife, or yeah, the
the
wife, the
the new mom.
yeah, the new mom. That's a much better phrase. And she goes missing, and he's going to go find her, and I just didn't feel connected to the new mom. Like, yes, it's important you go find her, but I felt, I don't know. I should have cared more about her than I did. It was very interesting.
Well, because you still didn't you still felt the way he did about her. Just like like, are you sweet on her? And people kept asking him like, no, but my dad is.
Mhm, mhm,
And so it's just like, yeah, I'm doing this for my dad. I kind of everything he did was basically out of duty.
mhm.
So,
Right, which, I mean, the BBC listed this as a coming of age tale in which a child must overcome his selfishness and learn to live for others, which absolutely is what ends up happening. You're right, maybe that is the reason why we feel that way at the beginning.
mhm. Yeah. When they first arrive at this house, I just wanted to say it is lovely. I
Oh,
would
mhm.
absolutely trade anything, any urban area for that house. It was so
Oh,
pretty.
absolutely. Yeah, I thought the same thing. I'm like, "Wow, I guess this is supposed to be a downgrade and a bummer, but I'll take it." Absolutely. Living in the country in that beautiful home, surrounded by the countryside all day, every day. Sign me up.
Yeah, and it just I watched actually a YouTube video of, interior design because I like those, and this girl sends in her design, idea, and she said, I would like to redesign my living room in a Miyazaki way. How would you recommend I do this?" And then the woman who's it was her channel, she's like, "Okay, we're gonna need all of this, and this, and this, and this," and green was very uh, evident in all of Miyazaki's videos or movies where as far as looking at these different homes, and it's just like very lived in and very homey, and like he does a really good job of making all of not just in this film but in his others, like you just feel like this is a place that I know and I could live.
Mhm. That's interesting.
And then you have this gaggle of dwarf hags coming up and just
Yes,
like
very Miyazaki old people design.
like it just at that moment I was like, is this like Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, but it's like opposite of Little Man and the Seven Hags? I don't know.
Yeah, I were they servants who lived there? I felt like they because they called them master, right?
Yeah, I don't know.
But
And
why
then
there were so many, but it was an estate, so, well, you gotta have all the people to help
and they
you.
knew all the tea, which
Right.
obviously they're going to know all the tea, but like at the very end, when the one that went with him just, like, comes out of his pocket and or the heron says, "Oh, that little item is too powerful for me to touch," and it ends up, like, the lady just comes out of the pocket, and it's like, "Okay, so is she magic? Are these hags, like, magical, and
I
that's how they why they're there?" There are a lot of questions that I had.
Yeah. A lot of questions in general. I felt with this movie, there were so many things that just were presented, and, there's no necessary rhyme or reason to why they are the way they are, or what's happening, and even at the very end, it's still like, okay, I'm supposed to clearly that's maybe it's a metaphor or something, but then on the other side, like maybe don't think too deeply about this film, just accept it
Yeah.
for what it is. So not everything has this underlying metaphor, although I do think many obviously do. But as far as a first time watcher of this film, I think you just have to kind of accept it and
Yes.
and roll with it. And
Which is like all of Miyazaki's
Mhm.
films.
Some things were just so abstract, and I think he does that really well,
Yeah.
and it is so different than anything you've ever seen before, and so that alone, I think, is one of the reasons why he's the greats, but I think just the artistry that goes into
Oh
his
my
his
gosh,
films,
yeah.
he had a team of 60 animators who are working on this, and they're just beautiful. Everything from the backgrounds to the animation, to the character designs, to the animation and the fluidity of the movements and everything that happens. There's just so much artistry in a Miyazaki film that alone you should go just to watch it and appreciate it
Yeah.
because he really is quite a master. And he still did animation on this that,
Wow.
before he was able to do quite a bit of animation. And obviously his production and his rate has slowed down, but he still was able to do some on this film, which I think is crazy and quite phenomenal.
Yeah, that's nice. There's also one quote at the beginning when the hags are kinda telling the story about the uncle, and they're like, "Ah, that uncle read too many books and lost his mind," and I'm just like, "Ah, tale as old as time."
Yeah.
It's not right for a woman to read. She starts having ideas and thinking.
So, I almost don't even know where to go with this. 'Cause
Yeah,
there's
I mean,
just
there's
so
just
much abstract that's happening and you could, like, talk about each individual portion. So there's this tower, that is built around which we later discover is built around some sort of extraterrestrial it's moon rock in a way,
Mhm.
and that has this ability to transport you into this other world, and this other world has like other dimensions where different versions of you are able to live, and it's being held together by the grand uncle who's a relative. They're all related, the people who are here, well, like at least the humans, and he's holding this world together, and it's this great beautiful world compared to ours, which is filled with malice, and
Mhm.
it's falling apart, and he's really the one that's keeping the final thread together. In this case, it's blocks that are, once the tower of blocks tips over, then it ends. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a like, I don't know where to go with
I
that.
think that
That was part of my dumbfoundedness of, like, I don't know how all of this I'm supposed to just take with me because it's almost like he wants the Mahito to follow after his footsteps and go like, do like, hold everything together, which would mean him giving up his entire
Mhm, mhm,
life with his family and staying there, and at the beginning of his adventure, he would say like, "Oh, what's," people asked him, "How do you like it up there where you're from?" And he's like, "I don't like it. It's not good for me." And so it's like at the beginning of this, he probably would have jumped at that chance to stay there, but at the same time, he was duty bound to find his
mhm,
new mom. And it's interesting. The step parent, like, and child relationship is interesting to see depicted through the years in film. So at one point I was watching The Sandlot and I noticed how the kid in that movie, like the main character, he just really wanted to impress his stepdad, his new dad. And then I think about different movies where nowadays a lot of they try to depict that relationship as a bit of adversarial, but this one was almost like a reasonable middle ground. Like he had a duty to her based on his familial
mhm.
ties, but also you could just it wasn't something that just came naturally. Yeah, so I felt like it was a good they did a good job of finding that middle ground with that, but, like, by the time he gets into this new world, he's following the new mom and is like, "Where'd she go?" And then has this whole scenario with the gray heron where he, has the dentures and, like, you see that it's an old man heron the old man heron. It's like
It's like a creature inside of it, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just weird. Yeah. And then they end up going he goes in, he's now on a boat with another character who the pelicans are I don't know, there's this whole side story about the pelicans and the other birds that are there that were all brought there by the grand uncle, and they've really overturned the natural way
Mhm.
things are in that secondary world. So it's like when the uncle says, "You can take over this spot," it's like, I mean, should you have done that in the first place? Because it doesn't seem like you've done a good job.
Yeah.
And then it's like they get to the gates where it's like anybody who enters here is for knowledge will surely die, and I'm like, yeah, you shall not surely die. I don't know about that, but it was just like I'm confused already.
I think that's just the struggle with this movie, is that there's so much, and I think it all means something, but it's not very clear. Like, why are there so many man-eating parakeets? Why is Himi
Yeah,
like pyrokinetic? Why can she control fire?
yeah,
Why does the heron suddenly start talking? And it's obviously because he's from this magical world, but things just start happening, and there's no rhyme or reason to it. It doesn't seem grounded in any sort of magic system, if you will, or like anything that to help us to
yeah.
understand. Like, it's just so random, seemingly. Like it's almost like a fever dream that we're watching.
Yes, and they try to come in and say that, "Oh, it's these rocks, it's these
Hmm.
things, these, towers that, that just kind of appeared in these areas, and then the granduncle, he figured one out by putting a tower around it and then used it in order to try to learn more about it. Yeah. So it's like they tried to wrap it around these rocks and these towers, but even then it was just kind of odd
Yeah.
and hard to really put my finger on, like, what it does it
Mhm.
actually mean.
Yeah, the film's best when you're focusing on the emotional elements and plot point
Mhm.
with him and the interactions of the people, and just kind of ignore everything else that's happening around to get you there
Mhm.
because it's a wild ride.
Yeah. Well, and there's in clear Miyazaki style, it takes its own
Mhm.
time. And there so many of those moments, especially when he first goes into that new world, he's like walking across a field and you watch him walk across the field. And a thought came to me at the moment where I was like, if a Gen Z or a Gen Alpha starts watching this, would they be able to keep their
Mhm.
attention span? Please tell me, write in and let us know if the Miyazaki style is something that, because of like TikTok and all these things where we're just so inundated with fast-paced everything, is this something that is a release for people who have been kind of brought up in the more fast-paced style, or is this something that they can't grab hold to? I mean, for me, I watch it and there is a moment where I'm like, this is going really slow. They're like really making you watch this. And I don't dislike it, but it is enough to recognize that this is much slower than what is normally
Mhm.
presented.
I appreciated it. Once the movie, began and we had those opening scenes and we're just seeing the pace of life, I was like, "Ah, yes, this is the Miyazaki that I love. It gives you time to
Mhm.
breathe. You just get to visually take in what's happening through the scenery, and the emotions are clearly conveyed nonetheless, and just the lack of talking, it was so refreshing. I wanna see the
Yeah.
the word count on a Miyazaki script versus all the different studios, and also to
Oh
see how that's
gosh,
changed over the
yeah.
years because I'm positive that the Miyazaki ones will be at the bottom of the list, and especially some of the
Yes.
the newer animated ones, I feel like it's just constant jabbering the whole time. There's no time to breathe, no time to enjoy anything. If there even is a beautiful scene, somebody is talking over it, and not
Yeah.
always, but
Mhm.
many times.
You're never asked to figure it out anymore.
Even if it is a beautiful scene, then you have, like, a song with lyrics over it. It's like, I can't even
Yeah.
enjoy the music. And
There's no wind blowing.
right. That's one thing I really enjoyed with this is I noticed the music. I mean, I've noticed all, like, the artistry, the animation, the pacing, the that we got to breathe as we watched this, and the lack of dialogue, or the minimal dialogue. They only said what needed to be said. But then I also did notice the music. And the music was a very poignant score. It's piano and I don't know, it just stood out to me and really enhanced what I was watching.
Yeah, it was lovely. I don't have any insight into it other than it was nice. I mean, everything really made it very cohesive.
Yeah. So what else?
What else is there?
Trust me, I'm sure there is. There is there.
I know. No, there is.
But just after a first watch, it's you gotta go back into this and
Yeah.
really, okay, like, now I know what I'm expecting, and I'm gonna go at it again.
Yeah, and I think that's an important thing, especially when you're coming in. So I'm sure that there's going to be people who have seen this multiple times and they're coming in and like, what a crappy, explanation because they just said wow the whole time. But I do feel like this is a movie that you would have to go in and take
Mhm,
in a couple times to really have much more to talk about in depth. Although, I mean, if you want to go through individual things of note, I mean, we can. This is a side note. Could you actually tell that it was Robert Pattinson?
no.
I could not at
And I
all.
that's, like, one of the main things I remembered that he had done this, and so I was kind of looking forward to that because he's become quite a prolific actor
Right.
over the years and does quite a few roles, and it was I had to stop and go, check the IMDb, except for IMDb was down because Amazon Web Services is down,
Ah,
and
yes.
apparently no one is decentralized. Everyone hosts all of their platforms
Yes.
on Amazon Web Services, and so then I okay, that's down. So I hopped to Wikipedia to see, okay, was he actually in this, or was he playing someone else? I could have sworn he was the Heron. That was like the big thing, and he was. And it was not just his typical phone it in, this is my voice. It was
Right.
an actual performance that he transformed himself. And I read that it took him a month of really rehearsing and practicing and trying to get this
Hmm.
voice right for the role.
Good for him.
You didn't like it?
No, no, I didn't say that I didn't. I just know
Uh,
that, I think back to his lack of trying with a lot of the
of
Twilight.
Twilight, that he just phoned everything in.
Right.
Like, especially on the press junkets. It was like,
Yes.
you don't care at all. And it's so obvious.
Sure, it's just Robert Pattinson has, had instances where he didn't really try as much, and so I just and then also, like, how he didn't exercise at all. There's little things where you're just like, come on, Rob." Um, so I'm glad that he did that, but I would not have put that to him. However, the Parakeet King, I knew right away was Dave Bautista, and I was like, "Hey, you." And all I could see was the Guardians of the Galaxy, like, version of him, and I was like, "Cool."
Hold on. There actually were quite a few people in here that have recognizable names. That Christian Bale, who has been
Yeah?
in other, was he Howl in Howl's Moving Castle?
Yeah, he was.
And Mark Hamill was the granduncle. So, and then obviously we talked about those other two.
Florence Pugh even.
But yeah, yeah. Lots of good people in the that's I guess we should say we watched the dub,
Right.
which is the way. I typically am not going to go watch the original, although I understand the merits of the original. But for the podcast, I typically watch the English dub and review like the English American slash UK version of the film.
Yeah, well, I'll also watch the English version with the English subtitles, which are different than the English script. So that's also confusing too. So it's like, huh, because it goes more translated from what the Japanese says versus what the script is.
Interesting.
So if you're interested in that, you're like, I don't speak Japanese, so it doesn't really help me to watch in Japanese.
I don't speak Japanese. That's from
No.
Chris Farley's sketch. I think he accidentally gets put on a Japanese game show.
That's right. And they're they're like killing him.
Yes. It's like those crazy competition shows that
Yes.
were big in Japan before they kind of moved over here into some extent, but not the same. But
Yes.
it was on one of those best of Chris Farley VHS tape.
Every time I saw one of those Japanese shows, I'm like, man, your guys' humor is just out of this world. You take it really to the max. I don't speak Japanese.
Japanese are the best. All right. Any other thoughts before we give our review or give our scoring?
Going back to the parts that I did feel were very touching was the moment because he had been deciding back and forth on who to honor more, his real mom versus his new mom.
Mhm.
And also I just have to say it's weird that the dad marries the sister. I just think it's weird. I'm sorry. Um I put myself in that situation and I wouldn't do it. I love and respect my brother-in-law, but that's not going to be that nope, that's weird. So I can understand the fact that he's like, "Oh, now it's just this new girl who looks just like my mom but isn't." And it's very weird for a kid. And then there's a moment where he's able to have like a final goodbye to his mom
Mhm.
as
Mhm.
she like recognizes, even though she's like this little girl in this, like she has a moment where she becomes his mom and is like, "You are such a good boy,"
Mhm. Mhm.
and that was very sweet, and I really appreciated that moment because you could tell. And even when the new mom was in the baby room or the delivery room, like, that was weird, but he made a conscious decision to call her mom
Mhm, mhm,
and say, "Okay, I'm no longer calling you by just a name. I'm calling you mom because that is who you are to me now." So, yes, it did a really good job of showing how he changed over the course of this film and made conscious decisions in order to change his own story.
mhm.
And yeah, you know, those two things coupled together of just having the moment with uh, changing himself to having them a moment of release with his mom was just very nice, and I liked that. And I think that that was overall the main point of the movie was that part.
Mhm.
And so yeah, I feel like that was my favorite part.
Yeah, and then the ending was very interesting. It was quite abrupt. You know,
Mhm.
it's 2 years later and they're moving back and he just kind of has a line, I can't remember what it was exactly, you know, but we see the mom has a new brother and he's about 2 years old, right? And they're
Yeah.
leaving the house, everything's empty. He says, "And we moved back to Tokyo." Essentially, is what he
Yeah.
says.
Yeah.
And it just fades to black at that point.
After 2 years,
And
we just went back.
yeah.
Yeah, the Heron was like, "Ah, you'll forget. It'll be okay because 'cause you'll forget." And
Mhm.
so it's like, did he forget?
Mhm. That's the question. Lots to think about with this one.
Mhm.
But with this one, I don't know if I'm going to spend a lot of time thinking about it. I think we've talked
Yeah.
about a few films this year that really leave an impact on you. Over the past, year or two, there's been The Wild Robot, there's been Flow. There's these movies that really leave a mark on you and you want to sit and you want to think about it. But this one, because the package was so oddly shaped and colored and eclectic, I don't know if I will be thinking about this one and its themes beyond this podcast right now.
Yeah, I agree with that. I watched the first like so I watched this twice, or one and a half times, I would say. The first time I watched a majority of it through, and then I had to stop, and then I ended up having to come back to it like a week later and watching it again. And I was having moments where I was like, I don't remember any of this. And so
Mhm.
it was having to remind myself of even the story that it was. So in that, I think that it was a little too much for me, for my small little abilities to kind of to gravitate to, and because of that, it's like, yeah, I don't think I'll end up watching it anytime soon. But I feel like if somebody the all of Miyazaki's movies are ones that is I could go back to at some point. Like, the feeling that you get while watching it is enough to make you be okay with just turning it on,
Mhm.
or
Mhm.
if it's on to just sit and enjoy. So I think overall his films have that effect on me, but also individually, I don't think any of them really have that much effect on me. So
Yeah. So what would you rate it?
3.5 stars, and that's only because of the replay value that it has with me. But if I were to look at, like, the artistic style, the music, the like, all there's so many different aspects of this that were spot on and amazing, and I feel in a way guilty of giving it that low score because I can definitely hear people who are super fans being like, "Oh, she can't even how dare she give it less than 5 stars." But for me, it was more or less an experience to sit through, unless one that really moved me to come back to with like, I would love to jump into that world again.
Mhm. Yeah, I was teetering between 3 and 3.5 stars. Uh, Probably because of the animation, the artistry, the aesthetic, the score. I would give it, a higher rating. I'd give it that 3.5. But as far as something that I want to watch again, something that I really enjoyed with all my heart, I didn't. it,
Mhm.
I kind of watched it and was sitting there and just experiencing the film, but not necessarily loving the film. And I loved elements of it, the themes of the young Miyazaki. I mean, it's not we're implying, the boy and what can be learned from youth versus the old getting ready to pass on and seeing the world change. All of that really, really important themes. Don't know if it's 100% executed the best, the most clear. I like what was trying to be said and how personal and deep this is. to Miyazaki. But as far as my viewing experience, it didn't quite hit where I feel like it should have. So with that, 3.5 stars. There was a quote from Miyazaki that was like, "Don't worry, don't think about it too much," sort of thing.
You know those, I don't know, like, "Oh, it must be so much deeper than what I'm giving it credit for because it's so out of my realm of understanding." And they're like, "Meh, I just thought it was pretty."
That's essentially what this quote says. It was like, if you think there's greater meaning to this, there's not. All right, let us know your thoughts. Thank you for being patient with us as we spent a while slowly getting to The Boy and the Heron. Now, this came out in 2023, and here it is nearly 2 years later. So, did you see this when it originally came out? Does it hold up on a rewatch for you? Where would that you rank this on your Miyazaki or Studio Ghibli list as far as films go? Let us know. Go to rotoscopers.com/356 and let us know there. All right, that's all we have for this episode. Until next time,
We are the
Rotoscopers. And kept him busy. And I also think of, who was I thinking of? There's one other person who's notable non-retirement.
I mean, most of the boomers.
Oh, no. Hold on. Wait. No, I'm good. Okay. Phew. I saw the XLR cable to my microphone
Oh.
and it was just sitting there. And I was like, oh, no, it's not plugged in. But I actually don't use the XLR cable. So I use a different cable. Anyway.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can you hear Montana?
I just heard her now.
She's dreaming.
Oh.
You can see her.
Oh.
She's, I don't know, chasing something. It's got to be some type of squirrel happening.
You've been listening to the Animation Addicts Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe and be sure to leave us a 5-star review. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you want to help spread the word, be sure to share the podcast with your friends on social media. Just don't forget to tag us at Rotoscopers on Instagram and use the hashtag Animation Addicts. For all the links and full show notes for this episode, go to rotoscopers.com/podcast. Now, if you still can't get enough for your animation fix, be sure to subscribe to us on YouTube and visit rotoscopers.com for more animation news, reviews, and interviews. Thanks for listening.